All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another AMA by the Olympians. Today we're joined by the Dome Finance team. Hello, guys. How are you?
Doing well, thank you.
Yep, same here, doing great. How about you?
Great. Today we'll be talking and discussing about your project. So we'll start with a few questions from myself and the other mods, if anyone wants to join, and then we can move to the community round where everyone will be able to ask you any questions. So without further ado, let's begin with this. For those who don't know, could you briefly describe what finance is all about?
Right. Yeah. So Dome Finance, basically an own fork, but with a productive treasury. And the whole idea is to have that treasury serve as the basis for multiple like self-sustaining business units we call cores. So right now the problem with own forks is like sustainability. Bonding cannot last forever, and bonding is also like a loop, right? So it's dependent on the demand of the actual token. So if demand for the token falls, then like the treasury doesn't grow as fast. But what we do is we bootstrap the treasury using bonding, then diversify the sources of revenue for the treasury, which allows it to remain stable and allows the APY to be sustainable in the long run. So instead of having just one source of income, Dome, you have multiple sources of income, which would guarantee the long-term sustainability of the protocol.
All right. So speaking of Polygon, why did you choose that network instead of others to deploy your project?
Yeah, so Polygon we chose Polygon because other networks are also like quite crowded. I mean, that's also another thing. Like Avalanche is very crowded, but Polygon seems to be the good spot. Like, or will have the most opportunity to expand within Polygon. It's not as crowded as the other networks, and this is very important because our cores need to operate on the networks. I mean, we do have plans to go beyond that, but like for now, we will be operating in Polygon and insurance in Polygon. There's still a lot of opportunity there. That's one of our cores, and we believe that Polygon aligns the best with our vision and our mission. So that's why we chose Polygon.
Okay, so I was reading through your Medium and documentation, but I wanted to see if you could go into more details on what is a core and how it integrates with your project.
Yeah, so a core is basically a self-sustaining business unit, and um, essentially provides a service or some kind of tool uh, that helps the Dome ecosystem in one way or another. So we currently have plans for four cores. The first core is Dome Treasury Management. What this basically does is it takes the treasury that we build from bonding and basically tries to um, not just, I mean, also getting the community involved, but the primary goal of this is to invest in other assets. So diversify the treasury, manage risk, more. So that's like the broad definition here. It's just long-term treasury growth through like capital appreciation, yield farming, things like that. So I think that's Dome Treasury Management's primarily focused on just asset management. The second core that we have is Dome Lending, and that essentially is, I mean, the Dome Overseer can talk more about this, but it's one of the tools that we have to maintain, I mean, like, so let me just go through like the whole process. Like, people need to sell Dome at some point, and people would want to sell Dome, allowing people to take loans on their position, collateralized loans, obviously, on their positions will would alleviate that sell pressure. So, I mean, the Dome overseer can talk about that in more depth because that's actually he's the core designer of that. So
Yeah.
he can go
So
more, yeah, go in depth on that.
yeah, so this core would be, providing an AAVE style lending platform within our ecosystem directly that would allow users to also leverage up with self-repaying loan-esque way with their stake dome and wrap stake dome assets as well. Obviously, we want to maintain risk as well, so there'll be different parameters for this, and different LTVs that we want to keep in bounds with for different assets. But ideally, we start off just lending against the assets in the Treasury, and then as those grow, we can even connect to some assets in Treasury management and things like that. There's lots of future ideas to not just have these cores operate, but also to bring them together and have them operate interconnectedly. Yeah, and I guess another thing I'll mention along with lending as well is there might be potential, and sorry, this connects also to why we chose Polygon. Polygon is a great, I like to call it DeFi frontier. I was looking at some things on some protocols on there already, such as AAVE, such as Curve, and I noticed that in comparison to a lot of these other networks, such as Phantom and Avalanche, there's not as much DeFi activity that we would be able to, hopefully, by becoming this DeFi conglomerate, even potentially, hopefully, maybe releasing our own stablecoin, could go into these ventures and truly make Polygon a hub of DeFi activity as well. So as Polygon grows and DeFi grows on Polygon, we also want to be there and be that main type of conglomerate, Frog Nation-esque protocol in that space. So I hope that answers both the lending core and the why Polygon to more greater detail.
Yeah, I think that.
Continue with insurance.
Yeah. So I mean, there are just two more cores left, but insurance, as I said, earlier, is one of the cores, and basically, one big thing that we have in DeFi, as many of you have experienced, we have ROGs, we have exploits. Those, in just a few months I think DeFi became big, 2020. We've had billions of dollars in losses just due to ROGs, exploits, all sorts of smart contract errors that we've seen just in DeFi broadly. So as DeFi on Polygon grows, a lot of these dollars will need to be insured. And one problem with insurance is you can't insure a position if you don't have a large cash or liquid pool backing those positions that you're insuring. I think with a very large treasury, I mean, insurance was just the intuitive step to take. Even though, I mean, it requires a lot of risk management. In our articles and blogs, we do talk about how we manage risk. But insurance was a no-brainer when designing, that core. It was just this is definitely something. We realized that was definitely something we could go into if we have a large enough treasury. And, this could generate, if we just get, I think on Polygon, I think around $3 billion or so are locked in yield farms, stable yield farms. And, if we were to just insure 10% of that, that's already $1 million plus in revenue, just off premiums. If we assume a premium rate of 2.6%, just off premiums from insurance, I mean, that's just going to be accruing to the general treasury just from stable, relatively safe positions to insure. So I mean, there's so much potential with insurance that we could use, to grow treasury in the long run. The last thing is the Domiverse, which is actually a real estate game. Not really a Decentraland kind of just all-purpose game. It's meant to be a game for you to build your business skills. And I don't know how concerned you guys are of SimCity, City Skylines, things like that. Games like that usually, it's not a virtual world, but then it's kind of like a virtual world because you're building your business empire, you're doing things, you're playing this tycoon game that allows you to build your power. But then the major thing about the Domiverse and why it has a huge impact on Dome is the economics behind it. The in-game currency requires you to kind of lock up S Dome. So as more people play the game, demand for S Dome increases. But you also have a lot of value that's just locked up, right? So I mean, that also reduces, that bank run possibility, which own folks will have to deal with sometime in the future. But by having a lot of S Dome locked up, you create an economic mechanism where demand for your game is actually playing into the game theory of the entire system. So what you have now is that people indirectly are like forced to stake because they have to stake Dome and lock that Dome up to play the game. I think that creates a level or an economic foundation for the protocol that's just truly unmatched in the space. So that's one. Those are like the cores of what they do for us. Very, I mean, I think we went into a lot of detail, but hopefully that kind of clears up the reason why we set up each core and the purpose that they serve within the ecosystem.
Yeah, you guys seem to put a lot of emphasis on the treasure management, right? Is that something you've learned from maybe other forks that have launched? Do you think, because most forks just launch and their treasure is just there, right? They don't do anything with it.
Yeah.
Is that something that you're worried about?
Yeah. So just like a brief background, the team we're actually building like trading algorithms, portfolio management algorithms. So we're kind of like obsessed with, just optimizing the value of, treasuries. And I think one of the things, like when I started the whole Ohm Fork mania and, we did our research, we realized that like, wow, these protocols are building huge treasuries, like huge millions of dollars, even in some cases, billions of dollars, just overnight basically. And I'm like, how on earth are they going to allocate this treasuries, and optimize it, not just for risk, but also for long-term value. And that was actually what inspired us to start Dome. We're like, look, we could use those treasuries, create the first true fork that has a productive treasury. Most of the forks in the space are coming up with like most of the things that like investments, different things that they come like it's usually an afterthought. For Dome, it's actually the plan. So we don't plan to build a big treasury then be like, oh my God, now we have so, how do we allocate? From day one, we already know what to do with the treasury. And I think that's why Dome is in much better position because it's actually planning. Like we have very detailed plans. I mean, if you look at our articles and everything, nothing will take us by surprise because we've literally planned out all the mechanisms and all that. Obviously, new things may come up, and we've allowed space for the community to suggest additions or edits to our plans. But then it's still it's still one of the most detailed, if not the most detailed, that like an own forecast for like just pure treasury management and optimization. So yeah, treasury management is a big thing for us, and long-term sustainability is the key question. I mean, most own forks haven't been around for even a year. People aren't thinking about the future, and like, yeah, how would this like forks sustain themselves for multiple years or for a long period of time? How would you actually gain value? Let's just say 3, 4, 5 years down the line. Dome's vision is to actually become a DeFi conglomerate, which I think was mentioned previously. Where sources of revenue are just flowing to the treasury. And that by itself will be, it's like, even if the own fork model needs to be adjusted or anything, I mean, just having sources of revenue would just improve sustainability in the long
Okay.
And to add,
Okay.
before we even came up with this idea for Dome Finance, we were investing, like he mentioned, we were investigating trading strategies, but these trading strategies focused in risk to reward optimization. So we did a lot of simulations, a lot of back testing for this. So we were already even prepared to take on the challenge of treasury management.
Okay, yeah, and that seems really interesting because a lot of forks don't really pay much attention to the treasury when it should be one of the key focus, right? So another thing I was wondering about, why did you decide to airdrop supporters instead of having, a regular whitelist? And why did you decide to stealth launch?
Yeah, great questions and really excited to answer those questions. So yeah, like the first thing is obviously the airdrop question. Why an airdrop? First reason is you have to look at like the pre-sale like system and who exactly takes up the risk of a pre-sale system and how that's balanced. So I've been in DeFi since I think August 2020, right when the whole DeFi summer thing started. Um, a lot of the a lot of the a lot of the protocols, the most successful protocols, Yearn Finance, were launched through an airdrop. Inverse finance is a great example of this. Um, it was formed by community control and community managed governance, right? That was like the main goal of inverse finance, of year-end finance, really the idea of decentralization. The problem that we have with pre-sales, and this is the problem that like many orgs are going to realize or are going to deal with much later down the line, is that like a lot of the people that go into pre-sales aren't really mining their way there by learning about the protocol, by learning about the vision, but just simply trying to get an early investment opportunity. That doesn't really create the community that we need for a long-term protocol. Dome is very long-term focus. So a lot of the people that are actually on our list have done many things for us. Many people have made videos. Many people have written a lot of things. So I mean, the alpha group that we have today, which is going to receive the airdrop, is actually full of people that have done a lot of work and when giving out the airdrop. But then also, like, I think one of the major concerns with an airdrop that I've heard broadly is sell pressure. And yeah, while that is true, we have several mechanisms in place to prevent dumping. So, I mean, I said, I can't predict market dynamics, but then we've put things in place to make sure, or at least to protect ourselves against, hostile actions taken by people like dumping, and other bots, etc. One of the things we have is vesting. This is just directly dealing with the airdrop group. We have a 2-month vesting period for non-NFT holders, and a 1-month vesting period for for NFT holders. This is actually quite long when you think about it in the crypto space. I mean, some of the other protocols are doing 1 week, but we've really spread it out to make sure that sell pressure is evenly distributed. Any sell pressure is literally distributed over, believe, it's like 33 days for NFT and 67 days. So that reduces the initial dumping concern. We also have very low liquidity at launch, which makes it unprofitable for people to dump. I mean, the slippage will not be, I mean, it's going to be really expensive. In terms like you get a very low amount of USDC or any token for your swap if you dump with like a pool that only has 5,000 USDC. So we've put in things in place that force people to stake upon launch to remain in the system instead of dump. So I think the airdrop model may actually, like, once again, this is an experiment that we've studied a lot. We've run a lot of simulations. We're hopeful that it pans out. But the major thing here is the pre-sale method, in my opinion, creates, doesn't really serve governance well in the long run. And that's something we're trying to change. And that's something that drove us to pursue the airdrop method. The stealth launch ties into what I said about bots. The stealth launch makes sure that no one is really expecting us to launch when we launch. So we don't have bots trying to like buy up a huge portion of the dome at launch and just sell it like as buy pressure comes in. So we've really put those in place as like a whole mechanism to make sure that like there's no adverse event that happens right after the launch. So we're hopeful that those systems and those mechanisms will work together, to strengthen the health of the system as we bootstrap our treasury in the beginning.
Okay, so one last question for me before we move on to the community round. 2022 just started. What are some of your goals? Where do you see Dome for this year?
Yeah. So I'll say the primary goals that we have according to our own team roadmap is, first thing is obviously getting the launch, the stealth launch, hopefully happens smoothly. Then after that, we'll start work immediately on the first core, which is treasury management. Then, so I'll say like this year, we're hoping to get like 2 cores out, which is treasury management and lending. And as I said, insurance would depend on the size of the treasury. I mean, if we have 1 billion in treasury, it's much easier to start like an insurance core than with 10 million in treasury. So I mean, that would definitely depend on the size of the treasury. But then at least treasury management and lending should be in practice, something that we pursue at least by the end of this year, hopefully. But the treasury management core is definitely something we have to get out right, like shortly after launch, or not shortly, but like probably a few months after launch. That's something that we need to get out. So yeah, this at the end of 2022, we hope Dome can begin, or at least is in a good position within the Polygon DeFi space. And our at least 2 cores are up and running.
All right. Okay. So we can move to the community questions then. If you guys have a mic, you can request to speak. We can let you talk to the team. Otherwise, we'll answer some questions from the chat. Anything that you find interesting, you can answer it.
Anyone want to speak via voice first before we start taking those text questions?
Yeah, sure. I don't think we have any requests right now. That's if you guys, I don't think anyone has a mic, or at least they are not requesting to speak right now. So you can start with the test chat.
Okay. Corey, do you want to start with that first question there, or do you want to just pick a few good ones you want to ask from the text channel? Do you want to go in order?
I'm looking through right now, so I guess I'll just like answer let me just answer. I'll just read through and see the new ones. Stuff I mentioned before.
I'll let you lead, and then if I have anything to add on, then go from there.
Good. Right. So just to answer a question really quick. Someone said 2 months vesting seems like a lot. I personally wait until vesting locks are over. They dump and I buy in. So what can help is unlock regularly, like one. Okay, yeah. So just to fully clarify this, when we say 2 months, we mean it's vested evenly over 2 months. So I mean, it's not just like a huge drop after 2 months, like oh now everything is unlocked. That'll be unwise because that will create a lot of sell pressure all of a sudden. So it's the sell pressure is distributed over 2 months. That minimizes the sell pressure per period. And if you actually run a simulation on like a quick swap or Uniswap simulation, you see that like what really affects the price greatly is not like sell pressure. Like if you distribute $1,000 of sell pressure over 500 days, the price really isn't impacted. But once you just dump 1,000, like that's when you have those huge dumps are what we're trying to avoid. So that's why we have vesting. So yeah, that's just to clarify. It's not all unlocked at once. It's evenly spread out over the 2 month and 1 month period for non NFT and NFT respectively.
And from a technical side, it'll function as a claim. So it's not like it'll just be directly sent to your wallet. You'd have to either interact via our interface or via the contract. So there's always activity, right? So it's not just just a random person that joined the Discord one day, got the role, and then just sits there getting the airdrop, farming it every single day. No, you'd have to actually go to the website every day, or interact with the smart contract every day to claim it, or at the end, or whenever. If you don't, at the end of the 100 or 200 epochs, that airdrop contract will just burn the remaining reserves. So anyone who's not active will not receive the benefits.
Yes. Okay, I think that was like the most pressing. Okay. Right. So okay. So I'll go to like 5 questions here. So I'll just go through. I already kind of hinted at like the Domiverse Dome, the different cores. So And so someone mentioned like any difficulty to build 4 branches. What plan or solution do you to resolve this difficulty? So yeah, they're like each core um, is has their own specific issues and or risks, and I can just run through that really quickly. So for treasury management, how do you know what to buy? How do you know how to maximize yield? How is that done in a timely manner? Like how a buy is executed, all those things like is executed. I mean, those are potential execution risks that come with treasury management, as we've seen in a lot of protocols. There's no real decentralized way to achieve that. It's usually one person that's making those buys, and that also creates an agency problem. Why would you allow someone trade assets or treasury assets like it's their own assets? What we do instead is by having a community-based, governance system for each core. For the treasury management core specifically, voting in people that would, have experience with yield management, that would so the community may vote. So let me just give an example to make it easy to understand. So if you have like if the community votes to say, hey, let's make 6% of our treasury be uni, it's just a vote someone proposes and it passes, then there'll be community elected delegates that would then say, okay, now they have the power to then achieve that goal or pass that or execute on that vote by buying uni, but then spreading out the buys, making sure that like the protocol itself actually gets that 6% allocation without losing too much from like front running different things. So I mean, there'll be people in there to manage those kind of risks, and that also applies to like other cores. We have articles out which kind of go into the sort of detail for each core, but then looking at those articles will provide that. But the basic thing is we have delegates for each core to manage risks and those difficulties, and those delegates will be community appointed, um, which should at least maintain a certain level of decentralization. So we don't have any so protocol. There are like checks and balances for the.
And and, and speaking to the long term, specifically about treasury management in this case, we also want to potentially integrate some automated strategies. And this comes from our research on risk reward optimization. And for example, it could work as a function of people proposing different strategies, automated strategies, then us automatically scoring all of them, and then the top five, the top 10 would be chosen by the delegates, by the community, to be actually run on a percentage of the treasury management core. So this is a longer term vision, but definitely something that we could pursue in the future.
Yes. Uh, so yeah, so the launch, yeah, so just someone asked if the 4 cores will be launched at the same time. No, so it's launched sequentially, and right now it's just based on the difficulty of like So we have to look at treasury size, like treasury management, for example, can basically be launched probably even from launch hypothetically, but obviously it needs to be developed and tested and make sure that like it works properly. But then treasury management really is just management of treasury assets. So that doesn't really require any sort of like critical mass or anything at that point. Um, but then obviously insurance will need to be much later, because if you want to insure 10 million, you need to have more than 10 million in your treasury, and you need to have a whole, and that needs to be a significantly small proportion of your treasury to start insuring things, just from a risk management perspective. So I mean, and the Domiverse obviously will require Dome to be sufficiently big to attract people to attract investors. So I mean, it's literally a thing that's based. So what we have right now, the sequence that we have planned is just Dome Treasury Management, Dome Lending, Dome Insurance, and the Domiverse, which will come last, and will be last core that's planned. But note, we still have a community or a governance-based process to introduce any new cores. That's how we evolve with the times. So I mean, there may be a change in the thing depending on how the governance, determines what's optimal, or what strategy or what launch strategy is optimal for each core. Um, so partnerships with other metaverses, I'm a huge fan of Decentraland, and I've been in Decentraland. I've used it. It's been exciting, and the Domiverse was definitely inspired a little bit by Decentraland. So yeah, I mean, we're open, but right now we don't really have any more plans. As I said, the Domiverse is um, is a much later core, so there's still a lot that could happen until then. But we remain open to that possibility. Um, so this person says currently think it's difficult to transfer assets between metaverse and the same network or cross network. Anytime to work on Dome Swap, AMM, DEX to assist players. So this person is just basically saying that it's difficult to transfer assets between like metaverses, and is asking if we have plans to work on like a Dome Swap or like AMM or decentralized exchange. I mean, once again, we're very pragmatic when it comes to, like I said, it's just whatever works that we go for. If right now there are no plans for that, but then if that proves to be a viable path to take, then that's something that we may consider. Obviously, depending on how the community um, feels about that.
Do you want to answer the question about how we got our name?
Yeah, let me. Yeah. I mean, you can answer. I guess you came up with the name. So.
I mean, I feel like I'd give you the credit, to be honest. Um, Basically, so when we were first thinking about risk to reward strategies, um, it we were thinking about, okay, like these strategies protect people from the drawdowns, and we were looking at ETH at the time. So these strategies give like a risk adjusted return on ETH, and the idea of Dome came from the fact that these trading strategies would protect people, right? So it's like you would be under a dome of protection from the volatility in the markets, right? And that's kind of like the idea that we played off of here, even with all of our cores, such as insurance, via lending and things like that, is that Dome is primarily a protocol that's focused on protecting all of the citizens within the ecosystem, right? So that's kind of where the idea for the name behind Dome Finance came into play.
Yeah. Okay.
Do you want to answer about security, or it's only the market that we need?
I think I can. Yeah, the security question. So someone had market there have been any attacks related to DeFi and security. This is very true actually, and that's one of the inspirations behind the insurance core. So how do you maintain security from attacks, and what efforts can you make for the progress of this very good project? Thank you for the question. Yeah, so security is obviously very important, and there are different kind of risks that obviously we make sure that we protect against. And the first obviously is smart contract risk. I mean, the reason why actually we and the Domo this year can talk about this in depth as the tech lead. But the reason why we actually delayed our launch, this was very disappointing for me personally because I really want to share what we've been building. But then we decided to focus on testing and security, and that's the primary thing that Dome. Dome is meant to protect investors. That's always been our goal and our vision, and security is always number one. But obviously, as we start launching more cores, we're going to invite like third parties to audit our code. We're very open with our code, and we allow people to go and sniff in and point out any vulnerabilities so we can address them. That's always been security is always very, very important for us. But I think another sort of like security or attack or possible attack actually comes from like the economic side, and that's like bots could take advantage of economic mechanisms to really kind of destroy a project, and that's also another thing that I'll say we've really focused on is testing our economic systems. With the airdrop system that we have also, that's a potential economic vulnerability that we've been simulating. We've had several simulations run. Recently, actually, we completed a simulation that showed that like even if 50% of people dump, if this dump is evenly spread out, it will basically have no impact regardless of buy pressure. So I mean that's something that I think is pretty, that's that shows the power of economic mechanism. I mean, a project may die just because of terrible economics or terrible tokenomics. So that's something we take very seriously and we study very carefully. Um,
Do we want to speak on KYC and potential future audits?
right. Yeah, you can talk about that since you.
Yeah, as for KYC, currently I have doxed myself to some of the community members already, but we'll be doing an official KYC, and I believe it's already in the works, right? We've already started talking with Assure DeFi for the KYC, and that should be pretty much completed very early post launch. As for audits, as we're currently just in Ohm Fork, we haven't looked to audit the current code base, but as we launch cores, we will definitely get third-party audits, probably multi-audits as well for different levels of risk on our cores, just to make sure that everything is secure. Because again, security is a very big, important focus for us. So
Yeah. Yeah. So one question that came up here is what's the biggest problem in digital economy? Um, I'll say like this is actually I chose this question because this is what I consider to be the biggest problem, at least for me, as when I'm an investor, is just kind of like the safety of my funds, not just like because I mean exploits happen, so not everything is a rug, obviously. But like sometimes you get like hacks, different things. So I think having really like nice, easy to understand, very user friendly insurance is something that I think is still in the early stages in DeFi, and that's actually something we're trying to change with Dome Insurance. So I think that's the biggest problem in the digital economy. I mean, you could also look like much bigger than that. Like maybe we need a little bit more, oversight over some of the things, especially with some of the rugs that are going on. I mean, that could be something a very controversial opinion. But I'll say like just safety of funds because I mean, a lot of this contracts are managing, billions of dollars, and I just like to be able to sleep at night knowing that I'm insured. But I just haven't really found good and actually fair insurance in the space. Um, yeah, so I have seen this question about the airdrop and stealth launch. So I guess I'll just summarize why we chose that. Like airdrop once again is we really want like a community-owned, community-controlled protocol, and we weren't really comfortable with the current pre-sale model as the means to achieve that. Stealth launch is primarily a way to protect against bots, as people have less time to prepare. Like, for example, we could launch any time. Obviously, not too far from now, but it just makes it less predictable for people to plot and plan. So I think a stealth launch kind of catches people off guard, which just means that people that buy are truly people that just learn the normal way, not people that are trying to bot and find their way through and uh, try to exploit the system. Um,
good question here is, what do you see your biggest challenge or two after, like in the first month after launch? I guess should we each just share like one challenge that we see for both of us, I guess, to cover both sides, tech and the other side of it?
Yeah. So I guess you can talk about the tech, and I can talk about like I guess economics maybe or
Yeah. So
phenomena. Yeah.
being the tech lead, I think the biggest challenge primarily is honestly going to be finding the right people that, first of all, not just and I shouldn't just say finding the right people, but finding the right people that have our vision in mind and are able to develop it to the quality that we want. We've like established a ton of long term and very, I would say, ambitious goals, and we need very capable people to achieve them. So one of my biggest things, especially, is going to be focusing on hiring the right people, on scaling up the protocol, and making sure that we hit our milestones. So, for example, that treasury management in Q1, early to Q2 is one of our big goals. I would say is I guess that's kind of what our roadmap looks like, and that's probably going to be honestly the biggest challenge for me is making sure that I'm able to scale the team, scale the development side of things to meet that goal, and to meet both that goal, but also that goal in a secure manner, in a way that is safe for all investors, for all participants.
Yeah. Um. Okay, sorry. Yeah. So are you like? Do you have any additional or is that?
Oh no, that was like pretty much like I guess to summarize, it's like scaling the team, making sure that we get the right people, the right talent,
Okay, yeah.
and also like the managing side of it. But
Yeah, I would say from like a protocol economics standpoint, the major thing is obviously it's very important to number one grow the treasury, and I'm generally in charge of like kind of our economics, very vaguely like the protocol economics, and what we need is a strong and fast growing treasury, and what we would need also is I mean volatility is expected in the space, but we would need the good kind of volatility, not like a constantly climbing price in the first 30 days. Um, I mean, price doesn't matter in the long run because of token like the supply expansion, but like the first 30 days, you would need at least good price action, that would encourage people to buy into the project and also bond and feel like they're actually investing in the protocol that's going somewhere. So I'll say the first 3 days, the biggest challenge I'll probably face or will probably face as a team is managing policy and community, and the community in a way that not only grows treasury but also keeps people engaged and makes people feel like this is something that's going somewhere. So that's going to be a challenge that we have to overcome. But I'm confident, like with our community, is already uh, quite nice, and I do believe that we can build something in the long run if we think about all the economic mechanisms properly uh, before making decisions. Um, okay.
Okay, I
So,
think
yeah.
you answered pretty much every question. If you guys want to answer any few more before we wrap things up.
Yeah, I'm just looking through. Let me see. Oh yeah, so someone asked like are alpha roles still being handed out for those who participate? Yes, we do still have a few spots right now, and usually, I mean, if you join our Discord, we will make an announcement if we're giving out a wave of alpha. I don't think we're actively giving alpha right now. We're just, uh, we'll make an announcement, maybe like a challenge or something, and yeah. So I mean, like yes, theoretically yes, like yes, you can get an alpha spot. It's not over officially, but we will announce when we're giving out roles. Um,
exactly, human capital over financial capital.
yeah, I just did that. Yeah, that's.
Okay, that was it then, guys. Thank you all for coming. Do you have any last comments about people who are maybe expecting a few words about your project before we close this?
Yeah, just to summarize, you know, I said our main value proposition and what we have to offer to the crypto space is sustainability. And I believe this is what is lacking in the space, long-term thinking. If you want to be part, or at least in the, join at the join the protocol uh, that actually thinks in the long run, that makes the right financial decisions that are necessary to succeed in the long run. And I think Dome Finance is for you. I do believe that the Olympus model has been one of the great, it's probably one of the best models, to grow the treasury. Then Dome actually uses the treasury that it grows productively for long-term planning. So if you like long-term thinking, join our Discord. I'll always answer your questions. But yeah, thank you all for coming. It's been really nice answering your questions. Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much to the Olympians for having us.
Yeah, thank you for having us. It's been great.
Okay, thank you both for coming. Let me link your socials so people can find you if they're looking for it. Thank you all for coming again, and see you on the next one. Bye.
Bye.